Present.
Councillor Craig.
Here.
Councillor Deutschmann. Councillor Erb.
Here.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Chair James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Solonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Vabanovic. Councillor Williams.
Present.
And Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you.
Excellent. I will now do our territorial acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that the land in which we gather virtually and in person today is the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, our achievements, and their contributions to our community. I also want to take a minute to recognize and celebrate someone monumental in Canadian history, Mr. Lewis Howard Latimer. I think many of us grew up learning about Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone. And Lewis Latimer was a Black man who was instrumental in helping Alexander Graham Bell with his patent for the telephone and ahead of the competitors. He executed the drawings and assisted in the preparation of the patent and also some other inventions as well. Just a little piece of Black Canadian history. We will now start a vote to reconvene in open session. Is there a mover and a seconder? Okay, I have Councillor McCabe and Councillor Craig. We will now start the vote. Please use your yes or no buttons in eScribe. Bless you. Okay, that is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. I also see item 5, presentations. There are no presentations. Item 6, we do have a delegation. We will now proceed with the delegation as listed on the agenda. I would like to remind the delegation of some guidelines for participation for those who are joining us in person. Please proceed to the podium. When you are called upon to speak, you will have 5 minutes. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting, interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on and at inappropriate times if you are joining virtually and presenting virtually, or any hate speech or defamatory comments. And one last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to listen, reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from the community members. So I would like to call on Jeff Steger, Director, Waterloo Federation of Agriculture.
Well, thank you, Chair, for that introduction. Waterloo Federation of Agriculture will help with the census of agriculture in Waterloo Region. First things first, congratulations on your election to council or re-election. Going to be a great 4 years, and don't want to forget staff. They do a lot of hard work to make sure things run well. And to that point, let's look at the census data. Right off there. If you want to look at your screens, look at the first page. We're going to do this. We're one item off of each page, and then an addendum, and then I'll wrap up there. It'll be nice, short, and sweet. And I would like to invite you, if you would, to have a look at the census data. There it is on the screen. So tell you what, let's look at the first page there. And this is information I always find fascinating. So how big is the agriculture in Waterloo Region? Well, you all can probably see your home municipality and just kind of look at it and think, well, I didn't know that before, or maybe you did in the region. Now, one caveat here. This gets to my ask at the end. Great document. Thank you to the region for putting this together. This is an excellent resource for us, taking this message to MPs, MPPs, and other all municipal councils in the region. But too bad, usually you're right on the ball a year after it comes out, but this year, and I'm sure the all the changes with Bill 23 have thrown the apple cart every which way. But we look forward to when this comes out again. And my ask is that you make this a regular part of each term of council to review the census data, look at trends and that sort of stuff. Okay, let's look at the census data, the number of farms. So in the Waterloo region in 2016, there was 1,374 farms. And in Ontario, there's 49,000. And in Canada, 193,000. Probably never thought there'd be that many. It's an important part of agriculture of Canada, what happens in our Waterloo region. I do have, to the fact that we don't have this census, the last page I have is a brief compilation of the latest census that we did on behalf of the Federation of Agriculture. Okay, with that being said, let's go to page number 2, please. And right at the top right corner is the average age of farm operators is lower than in Ontario. You know what that means? That means this is a growing industry in Ontario, or in Waterloo region. We are attracting new entrants. Probably because we have like 500,000 people live here, and there's a niche for some agricultural operation to produce something that 100 people would buy. So it's a great opportunity for young people to get involved in agriculture, because you can, if you've got something you like, I bet you there's another bunch of people in the region who like what you do. That's page 2. Not much else to put on that page. We do grow a lot of crops, 74%. Let's go to page 3, please. So this is the type of farming we do in the Waterloo region. Cattle and ranching is a big one. And you'll see other groups. We don't do vegetable and melon farming, but vegetable farming, there's more and more over time, because that's an interesting niche that people are following up on, that people want to maybe have like rutabagas or garlic or something like that. So we're getting more and more of that. Not as prevalent as, say, like Norfolk County or something like that. Renewable energy. 1 in 10 farms in the region use renewable energy. Typically solar panels, but what's up and coming are things like bioreactors. So this can either produce natural gas that's put back in the Union Gas's system, or electricity that they would put back into the hydro system. Some opportunities there. And the last page is how much business do these operations do? And if we can continue to do this for the census, we can see trends there. Is agriculture increasing or decreasing? Are we getting more farms or less? It'd be interesting. And I think at this level, it's very important, because you know what? In the next 4 years, you're all going to have a question about agriculture going to come up. If you would look at this as a resource, a starting point, we'd be very happy. The view from 20,000 feet, and with these actual numbers to help guide you in what that decision may entail, what it may lead to. So on the last page here then of this one, the farm expenses, Waterloo region, 2016 for intensive purposes, $483 million, no, sorry, $563 million of receipts, $483 million of expenses. So that's a fair chunk of money that flows in the region. You know, there's about 4,000 people in the region who get up every day, milk the cows and plant the corn, and another 20,000 people who have jobs ancillary to that, including transportation and some process.
You have about a minute.
Okay, so time flies by when you're having fun. Let's go to the last page here, and that is a census, something we did locally about what's happening in the very latest census. And you'll see farm numbers are about the same, and you'll see that local farm sales, some interesting stuff there. 20% of farms sell directly to customers, and $652 million in cash farm receipts. And so with that, that's the more formal part of it. The last thing I wanted to do was, you all got a copy of this here. Now I know after a long day of working and reading your reports, you're obviously going to want to do some recreational reading. We got that document for you. So this is something that was put together with farms from all over Canada, and it's just sort of quickly answers all the questions that most people have about agriculture. We want to tell our story, or else someone else will tell our story for us. And so this is really a flagship, wonderful document, and I encourage you to have a look at it. And it's done in a lovely infographic style. And once again, I'd like to emphasize, we should like the region to be able to put this together again for this latest census. And with that, that's my report.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff? I see we use an e-scribe. All right. Okay. Okay, so I have Councillor Deutschman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair James. As Councillor Foxton always likes to say to me, Regional Council has some of North Dumfries' finest, but today we have one of North Dumfries' brightest. Jeff, I want to thank you for being a strong advocate for the agricultural industry in our community. And long before there was Hold the Line, there was Jeff Stagger getting out there and reminding us about the importance of the agricultural industry in our community. And just want to thank you for your advocacy. And it's good to see you and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. And I just want to emphasize, you know what, in the Waterloo region, we're so fortunate we have city with all those amenities that farm people need, our rural people, and the rural people have open spaces and that lifestyle that are certainly, I'm sure, a great relief to our city cousins to participate in. So just want to echo what you're saying. Thank you for those remarks.
Yeah. All right. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair James. And yeah, great to see you, Jeff. I know you've been doing this kind of work for many, many years. So thank you, as Councillor Deutschmann said, thank you for your ongoing advocacy on behalf of farmers and residents in general in our region. Just wanted to ask if you could comment on what you see as risks to our rural areas and to farmers and farming in our region, or you could look a bit beyond that if you want. Sort of an overall, like what we should be thinking about. But also if you wanted to comment on Bill 23 and what you see as some of the risks from that piece of legislation as well. Thank you.
Those are great questions. That's a lot of stuff. So Bill 23 requires a whole different, we should probably, it'd be nice to do a proper presentation of that sometime, but let's let the process work out. There's so much change in it. How do you answer the question? Like, there was 10 other bills affected by Bill 23. My word, there's so many permutations of what that means to agriculture. I don't know where to start. Like, just briefly, I think of one is the conservation authorities. Goodness, we have an excellent relationship with our conservation authority. And some of the things that what you could read into the proposed changes is our Grand River Conservation Authority will not be able to help advise farmers on rural landowners on how to keep and administer programs that help us keep the groundwater clean. Well, we don't want that. We got a made in Ontario we're a leader in Ontario for our water quality program. So that's just one. You go up and down the line, But as far as I'll tell you what's good about the Waterloo region before I forget. I mentioned it already there's an opportunity for people to get into agriculture, and that's to find that niche and do that. The big commodity guys, that's just who's bigger and faster and got the biggest operation, but that isn't all that agriculture provides. Then if I had another 5 minutes, I'd talk about our environmental goods and services and our co-functionality of agriculture, where at the same time, for instance, when we actually use carbon dioxide as part of our process, we are a way to get rid of carbon dioxide. We take that and create other chemistry from it, proteins, vegetable oils, and that sort of stuff. So how does that fit in the scheme of things? We're the only industry besides forestry that actually sequesters carbon dioxide as part of our day-to-day process. Like, it's a complex question. It'd be fun to go down that path. Thank you for that question.
Well, thank you again. And maybe just as part of some of the new councillors, maybe it's as part of our education, we could have you or representatives from the agricultural sector come and provide a longer education update for us so that we are aware of how we should be. Like, I live in a city, but I have rural roots, but, just to help us keep that sort of top of mind as we're, discussing the variety of issues, like some of the things you just raised, I've forgotten how farming can actually be, some of your processes are sequestering carbon, not just creating it. So thank you for that information.
We look forward to that. The door is open to talk. And before I get out of here, I'll take one more second, just a nice brief chat with Planner Regier. And you know what? At one time, in '73, when this first started, the cooperation between country and city, we used to meet with the regional planner once every 2 years and just say, hey, is this what we're thinking about? What do you guys think? My goodness, that was the best thing ever. That would be a nice thing to have happen too, that a member of planning staff would come to one of our meetings and, hey, what do you guys think? What about this? And that kind of getting ahead of the things, getting ahead of what's happening is just a great thing. And once again, we're just glad for the great relationship we have with our.
Don't go anywhere just yet, Jeff. I've got a couple more speakers here. Chair, Chair Redmond and Councillor Foxton after.
Thank you, Chair James. And yeah, Jeff and I were commiserating that we've been at this a little while. I think that the pandemic showed us more than anything that growing food locally and buying local and having PPE made in Canada really put us in a much better position than we might have thought before the pandemic. And I think that there's also a real draw to have this binary conversation that Waterloo region is high-tech and advanced manufacturing and agriculture's over here. And you've helped remind us that agriculture is a really big economic driver. Both production and processing is a huge economic component to our vibrancy as a community. But it also strikes me when I've been out talking to people in rural Waterloo region that the technology has really changed over years. And I'm wondering if you just maybe could opine for a minute on how farming has changed over the past couple of decades.
Just the type of, the development of small niche markets are the biggest thing. Also, the fact that most commodity agriculture is influenced by worldwide activities all the way, our price every day is set by the Chicago Board of Trade. Every day there's a different price and you have a different financial thing to look at. That's kind of the same, but it's always a constant. And as far as looking to the future, you know what, it's really interesting. What strikes me is that movie called The Martian. And you know, he's up on Mars, stuck there for 2 years, he had to feed himself. How do you do that? There's a lot of research on how to produce food in other ways besides open space. And right now there's 1,000 acres of glass in the Essex-Kent corridor. And those guys, they can grow tomatoes and strawberries year-round. That's amazing. And so maybe that's where the Waterloo Region agriculture can go, is just to you know, think about how do we really capture even more of those types of new agriculture. And I don't want to promote the fact that we can pave over more land. Heaven forbid us to suggest that, but if we did enough research and follow-up, and maybe we see those trends in the census data, which I'm glad you might pick up on, we could see where we could go to make even more business in the countryside, to have it do even more things. Environmental business services, boy, I'd love to talk about that for a while, but I'm not going to. But thank you for your question.
Okay, moving on. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. Hi, Jeff. Jeff and I went to school together.
Anything else?
Behave. Just wanted to state that you see the decline in North Dumfries in farms, and that's because a lot of it's going to aggregate. Now, it's not that the aggregates scooped up the farms. It's that the next generation's not stepping up to farm. And that's a huge loss in across Ontario and Canada, is that the next generation is going elsewhere. But I love the magazine, and it showed a lot of individuals with immigration that had immigrated to our country and started farming and doing stuff. So this is wonderful resource, Jeff. Thank you. And keep up the good work. It's a great group, the farmers, and everything's done by GPS and stuff now, and soil testing and that, and it's all electronic and internet, and it's really a state of the art. So thank you.
And congratulations to you and the Township of Dumfries there with the Farmers Market Initiative you've been leading. That's certainly part of how to keep agriculture strong in the region. It won't float everybody's boat, but that's the up and coming opportunities to, you know, you want to do some goat yoga or something like that. We can do that.
Jeff, one more speaker for you. Question. Councillor Craig.
Well, it's a bit of a historical note, if I may, Madam Chair. I want to make a statement that the mayors in the past in North Dumfries and present are very tough people. I remember at one time when I represented Cambridge, claiming publicly that Rare, the conservation area, was the crown jewel of Cambridge. And in fact, nine-tenths of it is in North Dumfries. Joe Martins, at the time, got his nose out of joint, had 2 signs put up welcoming everybody to North Dumfries as you drove towards Blair, and 3 kilometers back, another sign, sort of boxing in that area. So I learned my lesson about taking on the township mayors.
I think Mayor Craig, you could, Councillor Craig, you could certainly hook up with Councillor Deutschman and talk about that on his podcast, Old Grey Mayors. I think you've probably already done.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Just so you know, we do plan on, is there another speaker? No? Okay, just so you know, we do plan on updating the agricultural census later this year as per your request, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to item 7, the consent agenda. If you wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now, as we will not take questions on consent items unless items are requested to be moved to the regular agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda will be dealt with in one motion. Are there any items that you wish to have removed from the consent agenda? No, seeing none, we will now vote to receive and approve the consent agenda items. Item 7.1.1, authorization to expropriate lands, first report for the installation of the Farmers Market Trail and associated works in the city of Waterloo. Do I have a mover? Councillor Foxton, and a seconder, Councillor Wolf. Thank you. Please use your e-scribe to vote yes or no when prompted. Okay, that is carried. We will now move into the regular agenda. First item 8.1, strategic focus, sustainable transportation. I believe Mathieu is going to update us on that.
Thank you, Chair James. So just in response to resident concerns about high speeds on New Dundee Road, Council directed staff in April 2022 to consider reducing speeds in advance of the planned construction of a roundabout at New Dundee and Robert Ferry Drive. So the construction is planned in 2024, and the question was whether we could reduce speeds from 80 kilometers to 60 kilometers an hour ahead of the construction of the roundabout. From a staff perspective, the lack of visual and physical features that incentivize speed reduction suggests that just changing the speed limit would have very limited or no impact on effective speeds. So our recommendation is, and we know that the construction of the roundabout and the adjustment of the road profile there will create this physical feature, enabling the reduction of the speed limit to 60 kilometers, or within basically around 400 meters on either side of this roundabout. So the recommendation is still to proceed with that speed reduction from 80 kilometers to 60 kilometers an hour, but only at the time when the roundabout is built and has the physical impact on drivers to reduce their speeds.
Okay, are there any questions or discussion? Nobody's in the queue. Okay. All right, is there a mover and a seconder for this report? Okay, Councillor Wolf will move it. Seconder? Everyone's tired? Chair Redmond, thank you. Okay, we will start the vote. Please use your e-scribe. Okay, that is carried. Thank you. We're now moving to item 8.1.2, the proposed transit service changes. Mathieu, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair James. So this report is it's a detailed explanation of the proposed service changes for GRT in 2023. So the overall proposal is based on an increase of 41,400 net service hours, which is about 5% of the service hours that we deliver today, with a potential impact of $5 million in annual terms. So the routes where service is proposed to be increased are routes, the I-Express routes, 201 and 202, which presented signs of overcrowding at the end of 2022, and we heard about it through council as well as through our customers. The other increase is on Cambridge bus routes, which had not been recalibrated after ION because of COVID, and where weekend service had not been fully restored. And the third increase in service is really on off-peak improvements on routes which either have shown signs of overcrowding, such as routes 8 and 12, especially midday. And that's one of the changing patterns post-pandemic, is that we're seeing the peak is a little bit less peakish, and there's more midday travel. So there's a bit of an adjustment of services between compared to what we had before, as well as weekend service addition on routes 31, 33, and 36, which are the routes where we received the largest number of customer service requests to fulfill that need, as a number of new developments were served by these routes. So the financial impacts of these service increases are significant, and this is why staff looked at ways to mitigate these through the removal of 2 bus routes with very low ridership. So when I say very low, and there's a graph in the report that shows it is an average of 4 people per bus. Following your questions and your direction at the previous session, we investigated and provided the detailed rationale behind this, as well as the socioeconomic characteristics of the neighborhoods that are served, that are provided in maps in the appendix, as well as the alternative coverage provided by alternate bus routes. The savings estimated through this adjustment are estimated at over $1 million per year, which enables us to reallocate the resources to routes that are serving more customers. And so you'll have all the various ridership forecasts are indicated in the report, and they show that overall this 5% service increase that is the scenario that's built and that's presented to you for direction will lead to an increase in ridership that's expected to be over 400,000 rides per year. And I'll stop there for the introduction, maybe to leave place to the debate and the discussion.
Okay, Councillor Huniak.
The report that you sent out, Mitch, you referred to increased service hours of conventional transit. Are there similar service increases projected for specialized transit?
Yes, through the chair. Maybe I'll call on Neil to give some specific numbers on the specialized services.
Good afternoon, through you, Chair James. No, there's no plans for service increases on Mobility Plus at this time. We would maintain the same level of service as we have in 2022. Mobility Plus services haven't recovered as quickly as in terms of ridership as compared to conventional transit. So we're probably at about 60 to 70% of pre-pandemic ridership, although it is growing. It's just the nature of the clientele hasn't fully returned to use the service in the same way as conventional ridership has. There's no plans to decrease specialized service. It maintains status quo.
Okay. And can you speak to also why the pilot project Route 79 doesn't also apply to specialized transit?
Through the chair. So Route 79 is that's the on-demand kind of flex pilot project that's serving the Breslau community and connecting them to the 204I Express. So today that service is fully accessible. So today people who have mobility needs can ride that shuttle and use that same app. So today it's still a pilot project. So I would say there's no parallel service to Breslau, but that service is fully accessible today.
Except if you can't transfer buses, right? So when it is no longer a pilot, will it be under the jurisdiction of specialized transit?
Through the chair, I think that poses the broader question of specialized transit from the urban region to the rural region. Because today it's true that these specialized services operate somewhat in a separated way. They are contracted out separately, and then there's because of the area rating, the focus of the services is different. But that's definitely something that we can look into, I would say, beyond Route 79. I think we've heard from other members of council there are some issues where you have a bit of an asymmetry between people traveling from the townships into the cities versus traveling out of the urban area to the townships. So we can look into that more broadly, because I think it applies more well beyond kind of Route 79.
Yeah, I think it's important that we promote equality across all GRT services. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, through you, Chair.
I appreciate this report, Matthew, and that it answered a lot of the questions from January 18th. I noticed it failed to even mention the questions that I had about the servicing to the Sikh temple and looking into that as a possibility in this budget. Could you speak to that and where we're going to see this in the budget process, please?
Through the chair. So this is, I mean, right now it's less of a budget consideration than really a road safety. So I know that teams have been looking at it, just the safety. We know we have only a westbound stop at the temple and on the route. So that's right now there's just, physically we're not able within kind of safe driving conditions to stop a bus on an eastbound route going back into the urban area. So there's really that technical work that's required which is the feasibility piece, and that's something that we're considering right now. But it's not part of there's really a technical piece that precedes any budget decision. But we can bring that back and with the technical information when we have that available to you.
Okay, thank you. If we could see that, please come back with the technical. I would say in a timely manner. I certainly don't want this to become our Highway 7, and I know that this has been a request of the community for a very long time. So thank you.
Okay, no further questions. I just want to say thank you, Matthew, and your team for looking at the services and responding to what the community needs were in terms of where service can be enhanced or added in addressing that need there. So, all right, I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Wolf? Councillor Foxton? I don't know what's going on this side of the room here today, but please use your e-scribe when prompted. Okay, that is carried. Okay, moving along to item 8.1.3, transit services fare structure, discounts and revenues. Matthew, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair James. So this is a parallel report on the fare piece. So we know that these two operate really hand in hand as all of the revenue is used to be able to generate the services that we provide. So this report really presents the details of the proposed fare changes for GRT in 2023, incorporating the guidance that was provided and the direction provided by Council in previous meetings. So the central budget scenario that is proposed right now, it hasn't changed. That remains that average 2.5% fare increase, which is designed to cover through that annualized revenue of $500,000. That offsets kind of the exceptional combination of increased fuel costs and post-pandemic service increases that we have to support in 2023, which overall is estimated as an increase. And I remember the waterfall diagram 2 weeks ago. It was shown as that 12 million or 11 to $12 million impact every year. The impact on ridership of this 2.5% fare increase is expected to be limited to -0, so it's a 0.5% decrease of rides, so 100,000 rides per year. So that's compared to the almost 450,000 that was talking about that are the result of the increased services. So following the concerns expressed by Council in terms of transit affordability, it is proposed to cancel the impacts of this fare increase for all transit users eligible to the Affordable Transit Program. So the mechanism to do that would be to increase the discount level that they benefit from today, which is 48%, to move it to 50%. So that would, in effect, kind of cancel any fare changes for these households that are eligible to that program, whether they use stored value, so tickets on their cards or passes. Alongside this, I think, note that the eligibility thresholds, and that was a question from Council last time, they are also being adjusted. So we just had the information from the federal government that these will be increased by 3.3% this year, and that will be, I think it's effective immediately or early March. So there is that adjustment to inflation that will make more people, more of the residents eligible to that program. Now, in response to Council direction to consider youth and senior fares, so the report provides a detailed kind of the best estimate at costing that we can do of the proposals that were brought forward. Today, the proposal from staff is to look at youth fairs through the Family Day Pass, so to extend the existing Family Day Pass product, which today is really, it's only for weekends and holidays, so we would extend that to work every day, and that would enable adults and youth from the same household to travel any day of the week for $10, which is, and there we expect that this will be revenue neutral because of expected ridership increases. So that would enable, as soon as you're, it's just basically for the equivalent of 3 fares. Basically, you would be able to travel in an unlimited way with children from the same household everywhere on the network and every day of the year. Regarding the senior discount approach, as I mentioned last time, I think the affordability or the affordability rationale is a bit tricky, and what we're offering is to do a longer term review of senior discounts through the upcoming GRT business plan in order to consider the broader benefits than affordability, because the costing that is presented in the report shows that the proposal to make transit free for seniors 2 days a week would be equivalent to about $300,000 of lost revenue per year, while benefiting a category of users who are on average more affluent than the rest of the population. But we will examine this more thoroughly as part of the GRT business plan to really just look at all of the barriers for seniors to travel on transit services. This business plan will also, in response to questions from council, present scenarios to gradually reduce the average fare over the period of this mandate, as we understand from council that affordability is a critical element for transit users, and we will evaluate that impact on ridership and revenue and how to best kind of optimize the revenue piece with respect to affordability. So in terms of the proposed recommendations of the report, the recommendation talks about endorsing the continuation of the affordable transit program as the best tool to address affordability for families whose incomes fall below the poverty threshold, and adjust it to cancel the 2.5% public transit fare increase. That is still I would say the central scenario in the budget. It approves also the creation of this extended Family Day Pass, so that would be that new product that would be introduced in July alongside the fare change and the different products that it's usually the best time of year to change our fare structure. And then commit to bringing the more of the and broader age-specific fares for seniors and further use, because we've also heard of I would say youth beyond, between 12 and 18 years old having other specific needs. So these will be brought forward as part of the new business plan that will come to you at the beginning of next year, and forward all of these resolutions to the Budget Committee for consideration and integration in the budget.
Okay, I have one Councillor Deutschmann. Questions for Mathieu?
Yeah, I have a question, and I'll have comments after with respect to this. Mathieu, when we were here last speaking about it, there was a request to come back with some proposals to advise council how we could fund, for example, a test on the 12 and under and the 2 days for seniors. But I see none of that here before us, so I'm a little disappointed about that. In my comments, I'm going to ask that this motion not be voted on today, but be deferred to February 22nd as part of the overall budget consideration. But, so Mathieu, maybe you could speak to why we're not presented with some options in terms of how we could fund a pilot with respect to a specific request that seniors from our community, seniors who are members of a committee dealing with senior issues from our community, here to speak about this issue, and, would not agree with you on the affluent characterization of seniors. I think that is not a fair assessment with respect to that issue. But anyway, if you could tell me why we're not being provided with some options for funding a pilot project. Thank you.
Through the chair. So I think on pages 6 and 7 of the report, we did bring a cost estimate for these two proposals. So for regarding youth aged 5 to 12 years old, the estimate, if we implemented that starting in July alongside other fare changes, that would have a revenue impact of approximately $150,000. So that's really the option put forward at discretion of council. And regarding senior discounts, we brought also kind of that first cost estimate, which is estimated at, which would be a lost revenue of about $306,000. So that's at the bottom of page 6. And so these two are, I would say, costed options left at the direction of council.
So just, Madam Chair, if I could follow up. I did see those items, but I didn't see where we could fund those from any particular reserve fund, for example. So I didn't see an option provided to us by staff with respect to that. Well, it's not in the report. That aside, the issue of the 2.5%, as I read the report in the section under your chart, you note that the effects of the fare increase on ridership are notional figures. They do not take into account the increased ridership generated by reallocating resources to increase service. So I take from that, and it goes on to say report numbers on transit service highlights that proposed service adjustments are expected to support more than 440,000 additional annual rides, which is significantly more than the ridership loss forecasted in any of the fare increase scenarios. Now, you can tell me what is meant by there, but I take that to mean that this is offsetting some of the loss of not increasing the fares by 2.5%. So please correct me on that.
No, Mr. Dyer, you want to respond?
Through the chair, I think the answer is that for each of the service expansions that's included in the preliminary budget, staff have both estimated the costs, obviously, of providing that service level, and also identified any incremental revenue through additional ridership. So I think the point is that the incremental fare revenue associated with service expansions is already built into the budget. And so for example, if the fare increase were to be removed from the budget, then there would be a $272,000 revenue loss in the 2023 budget. And because the transit service is predominantly funded by both fares and property taxes, if the fare revenue reduces, then the property tax piece goes up, and that's why. So that's why each one has to be looked at individually, and that goes back, I think, to the earlier comment, which is each of the revenue items that were identified that Mathieu spoke to, the source of funding ultimately becomes the levy. If revenue is not being generated, then the levy provides the funding source for that particular service.
Just a point of clarification, Madam Chair. As I read the paragraph, it clearly says that the service adjustments are expected to support more than 440,000 additional annual rides, which is significantly more than the ridership loss forecasted in any of the fare increase scenarios. So if we're covering the losses, of ridership, aren't we covering also some costs with respect to that? Or are you suggesting that the 272.5 is net of those 440,000 additional rides? I'm just reading what's in this report.
So through the chair, the 272,500 is the impact on the budget of not implementing the 2.5% fare increase, net of any ridership changes.
Okay, does that clarify? Councillor Deutschmann? Without
I'm not
getting
going to get into an argument with
Mr.
Dyer on it, and I'm not. I don't agree with what was said. I think the paragraph is pretty clear here. It doesn't say that, but that's fine. I wasn't going to comment any further. I just commented because you referred to me, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. I have a few other counselors. Counselor Williams.
Hi, through you, Chair. I just sort of a point of clarification. So I know that they're increasing the percentage above the poverty line, but I feel like in our community, I've heard from so many people that even with the new fare structure for above the poverty line, like people who are 40%, 50% above the poverty line are still struggling to purchase passes for their students that are going to high school. So I was just wondering if there was like a thought into working with the high schools for student fares for not just low-income families, but just high school students in general. Because I know when I was younger, my mom couldn't afford to send us on the bus either because we were like right in that weird point where we were like above the poverty line, but like not really super affluent. So I was just wondering about the gap for teens because sort of, again, a point of clarification, like, do you know how many students are using the new fare structure since we've gotten rid of the student fares?
Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. To that question, I think the age-specific questions in general, the recommendation before you is simply a recommendation, staff's best advice, and under E, that we bring a comprehensive review of age-specific fare for seniors and youth discounts forward as part of the new Grand River Transit Business Plan. So we definitely intend to cover that off as well as all the other age-specific plans. If this motion, and I stress if this motion were to pass as is, if council wanted us to implement something else with respect to seniors or youth or anything as part of the budget process, we obviously would implement that. Our advice is, given the complexity of the questions, including that's a great one, as was the previous one, that more time would be beneficial. And our recommendation is that we come back with that specific answers to all those specific questions as part of the overall business plan. But again, if council prefers to move sooner, we would move sooner.
And just to clarify, no, Councillor Deutschman, you mentioned potentially a motion to defer this until February 22nd. Do you want to put that motion on the floor now?
No, I'll put that on after everyone's
Okay.
had a chance to speak to this topic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Chair James, to Matthew. Am I correct if we, from previous figures, if we gave seniors 1 day, a limited day, which I imagine is 9 to 3, it would be $110,000 loss? Was that the figure?
Through the chair, I think we had studied the Sunday option, and they're the one that's presented in the document is the 2-day option, the Wednesday and Sunday. So I think Sunday was, I think, 110,000, and the 2-day option, Wednesday and Sunday, is 306,000. So these are our best estimates at the revenue loss generated by that free transit day.
Okay. So if we decided to do a pilot project with 1 day, if we wanted to see how it worked, that would still be possible, if it was council's desire. Yes?
Through the chair, I think we've tried in between the report last time where we looked at that 1-day solution and found a proxy which was about 110,000, and then there we're bringing back really explicitly that proposal to do it free for 2 days a week. So I mean both options are possible, and I think that that's the information that we can bring forward to inform your direction into the planning and the budget committee.
Right. I mean, I think that at least 1 day for seniors would be worthwhile, and I know you have some seniors definitely can afford the bus, and those seniors generally take a taxi. So there are definitely still a lot of seniors who this would be very helpful for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair. Great discussion. Staff have to provide us with a good business plan. We have to decide on a living plan. So, Councillor Deutschman, if I may, maybe instead of deferral, that we direct staff to come up with a plan of 1 day as Councillor Wolf has suggested, and not argue the numbers, but decide whether we're going to put them in the budget or not. So why don't we, instead of doing that, let's not argue the issue. Let's put forward what you truly want to desire. I like Councillor Wolf's one-day idea. I have to say that after our last discussion of this, I got emails from seniors saying, I have a good income. Let me support families for free on the bus. And I kept saying to them, I got several of them, and I said, regional, we're still looking at this, but thank you. But so I don't think seniors across the board, as Councillor Wolf said, I don't think are in a tough situation. Some definitely are. And the ones that are covered off with the, is it 50% you went up to? It was 48 and you went up to 50. I'd still like to see low income get it free, but low income families get it free. But maybe we could have those scenarios for budget. And with this, maybe just to turn down the motion and wait and see what the budget comes up with. Is that fair? If that, I'm bowing to you, Councillor Deutschman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're saying the same thing in the sense that we're not going to vote on this today, defer it to the 22nd and look at options and see what we could do if we could. And so we're speaking the same thing. I'll just point out, I also get emails from a variety of seniors, some that cannot. So there's a variety of things out there. Right. Thank you.
One response. You're on a time. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say, I agree that there's some that can and some that can't. And I was hoping the plateau for finances with the per individual would take care of that, regardless of age. Because I don't think age matters as much as income for everyone.
All right, so we potentially have some options to come back to. I'm going to continue through the list of speakers. Councillor Urbanovic, you're next.
Thank you very much, Councillor or Chair James. And thanks, staff, for the information. I will say that I, too, was of the impression that the request or the direction that we had given after the presentation was to come back with a proposal of how we can do this. So that doesn't seem to really have played out here for me, other than specifically getting into some amounts. My question in relation to the amounts is, did you look at this purely from the perspective of estimates of potential revenue losses? And did you at all in your calculations factor in the fact that some of those people will in fact find value in the bus experience or the LRT experience, and in fact become users who aren't right now, and therefore there'll be additional revenues that we're not getting from them? Has that been factored in, as well as if we see more people riding, that impacts the amount of money we get from the federal government because it's and the provincial government because it's based on ridership? Was that factored into the financial calculations?
Through the chair, so the estimates are really focused on revenue loss. I think that today there are some conflicting factors at play. When you ride 2 days for free, maybe you'll ride more, or maybe you'll ride less because you'll focus your the day that you take transit or organize your appointments on the days when you're free. So I would say today we don't have a large body of evidence to be able to give a good estimate of whether the 2 free transit days, for example, for seniors would generate significant ridership. Our understanding is, or at least from best professional judgment that we have, is that that's not the case. So we looked at it just really from a revenue loss perspective, knowing just based on what we know our population of riders looks like, and how many seniors ride or rode the system when we tally their participation and their numbers in terms of our customer base.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Dyer, this is probably a question for you. Is there a scenario where if we do a pilot, actually, we don't, quite frankly, account financially today for that pilot, and we see how it plays out? I mean, we have a rough idea in making the decision, But in fact, if we end up staying whole, then it's a non-issue. And if we don't, it gets funded out of one of our other accounts. But we're not actually transferring money simply to put money into the transit system budget. And so it actually becomes a learning, an opportunity. The pilot becomes an opportunity to actually see what the actual impact would be.
So through the chair, if the question is, can a change be made to our fare structure without an adjustment to the budget? I suppose that's possible for council to do. It wouldn't be recommended by staff. I suppose the outcome would be is that if the pilot continues, then at some point the impact of say revenue loss, if that's the case, would have to be built into the budget. And whether that's in 2024 or in a future year, I think again, staff's approach in this report was to identify to the best of our ability the financial implications of making changes to the structure. A structure that has, currently has an income-tested approach rather than an age approach. And if council's looking to move off of an income-tested approach, I think from a staff perspective, we would say that's a larger public policy decision that should be made in conjunction with the next business plan. But we're in council's hands here.
Okay, and so, Madam Chair, in that respect, I would certainly, just so I don't need to speak again, I would be inclined to support ultimately this decision being made on budget day in the context of the full budget. And I'd also be inclined to explore ways that could see it happen on a trial basis without implications to this year's budget, recognizing that, once we learn through that trial that there, potentially will need to be decisions made in the 24 budget and beyond. In fact, we might be pleasantly surprised and also find out that the opposite was true and that we have additional revenues. And in fact, don't need to, it ends up being a positive for us as opposed to a negative, which I suspect is maybe what some of the other cities have found.
Okay, thank you. Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Urbanovic has actually given a good example of what we're trying to do. As staff, when we hear these discussions and hear the delegations, we also hear various opinions around the horseshoe. So we have heard various opinions, and whether it's a pilot or whether it's the fare for youth or the fare for seniors, we've heard various opinions and not a decision. So we brought this back and we weighed not putting a recommendation in and just the information, thinking, well, council will say, can you put forward a recommendation so we can at least debate it and alter it? So we come in the spirit again of this was our best recommendation. My advice would be, if you're going to defer it to budget day, and fine to have that happen, it would be helpful for us to get some sense of direction of what's coming on budget day. So for example, under E, we've said our recommendation would be to bring forward each specific discussion and a more robust conversation through the Grand River Transit Business Plan. However, if this council's direction would be, we'd prefer not to do that. We'd prefer to give you some direction, whether it's a pilot or some direction on seniors or some direction on youth. Believe me, we would love that direction so that we could then bring that forward to budget day. So I wonder for the various councillors who have spoken and others, looking for clarity as to whether this would be full deferral, or is this a way that we could take the draft recommendation here, I'll leave it to clerks to decide how we dispose of that, and find some sort of direction. So I'm hearing something around E. It's still not clear to me whether the preference is to debate that on budget day, or whether you'd prefer to have a more robust conversation today and perhaps give us clearer direction around pilots or youth or seniors. So Chair, through you, if we could get some clarity on that, that would be really helpful.
Okay, so once we get through all of the speakers, because there's been a couple of things proposed and options, and to me, there's also a potential to take pieces of this and maybe vote on it today, and some defer until February 22nd. So I'm going to go through the list. There's still a few. Councillor McCabe, you're next.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thanks for the report, Matu. Appreciate it, and your comments, Bruce, as well. I have a couple of specific questions, and then I wanted to just make a comment towards what Bruce just said. But regarding some of the costs that we have, do we anticipate, like, we have pandemic pricing on so many things right now. Do we anticipate gas and some of these costs decreasing? I mean, I know we're seeing that, starting to see that, for example, in the construction sector. And if we're looking at costs like that decreasing, is there a possibility of, like, I'm not really a fan of doing the 2.5% increase, so for the fare increase. So I'm just wondering about that piece to start.
Just through the chair, maybe two things. I think on gas prices, we know they're extremely volatile. So, if I could tell you what the price of gas were in 6 months, I would probably not be investing in oil because it's not my interest. But I think I definitely have some revenue making tips. But it's very difficult. I would say I know what we know for sure is that on the diesel side, there's a production issue in North America because a number of diesel refineries have closed, and so the increase of the cost of diesel comparatively with regular gas seems to be durably on a higher track than where it was in the past. So that's the evidence that we have. I know that cautiously, and maybe I'll pass it to Commissioner Dyer. I know that the part of the increase in fuel cost is, from a budget perspective, it is being offset through a specific mechanism that I don't remember what the name is, but I think Commissioner Dyer can help with that.
Through the chair, thank you. So yes, fuel prices have been a significant impact on both our costs during 2022 and in our 2023 budget. We have assumed a fairly significant increase in fuel prices, keeping in mind that our 2022 budgets were based on, if I recall correctly, $1.06 and $1.08 a liter. So even if prices were to come down, they would likely still be much higher than we had in our 2023 and 2022 budget. And so in anticipation of that, essentially what we've done is we've used the tax stabilization reserve to phase in the fuel price increase over 2 budget years. And if the scenario results in exactly the one that you've contemplated, which is when we get to the end of 2023, fuel prices haven't gone up perhaps as high as we might have thought, then that's exactly why we've adopted this strategy, because then we're not, let's say, overtaxing in 2023. In an optimistic, ideal world, when we get to the 2024 budget, we can lower our price, pull out the reserve funding, and we're good to proceed into the future. So that's I think the beauty of using the tax stabilization reserve in that particular circumstances, because as Mathieu correctly said, there's a significant amount of volatility and unpredictability in that market.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. And I guess to Bruce's comments, when I put these proposals forward, or the bulk of them forward, and worked with some stakeholders in the community, really, ultimately, my goal, and what I've said a few times in my short time here, is that I'm looking to work with staff and the community, of course, and council to have a robust transit system where the fares are a reasonable price. I think they're too high right now, but because they're pretty much the cost of in Toronto, right? Which I just think that's out of whack. So they are what they are at present time, but to have a process by which we can have a system where those who need those reduced fares are getting them, but that we have a robust system where there's increased frequency and moderate fares. So that's why in the budget, I really think a lot of the conversation we're having today we should maybe hit pause on it and take it into the strategic planning process so that we can have that really deep discussion about who in our community needs the reduced fares, who doesn't, what is our 3, 4, 5-year vision for transit and transportation for our community. So I'm not a fan of the 2.5% increase right now, but if it's council's will that we do that, fair enough, but no pun intended. But I do really think that rather than having pilots and sort of one-offs, that we should really have that deep discussion about what we want our transportation system to look like and how we want it to serve people of all ages and incomes.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy. I do think as well that, this is bigger strategic, long-term thinking, involvement with community. So I'd agree with you on that component, strategic planning process. Okay, moving along, I think Carrie, Councillor Williams.
It's Chantel. Her request to speak isn't working. So
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Councillor Huniak.
So just to follow up on, through you, Chair, to follow up on Dorothy's comments about deep discussion of what transit should look like. I agree. We need to have that in a long-term basis, but I think that I've heard a lot of speculation so far in terms of revenue losses and revenue gains, and one way to get some hard data on that is to do a pilot. And so, yeah, I think we need to look at what a strategic pilot could look like. Thanks.
Turn this off. Thank you. Councillor Craig.
Yeah. Well, Madam Chair.
Thank you. He said age before beauty.
Yeah, well, it's true. Anyways, a few concerns here about the process we're using with the budget, and again, being unfamiliar. And I think maybe this is directed at council, but also the regional chair. I mean, we come in on the 22nd, we're looking at a 9.2% increase. And we're really not cutting anything at this point of substantial nature to make the budget easier in terms of the whole concept of affordability. And on the 22nd, we'll be adding things in. Are we going to have a time period in between to talk about, should we be asking staff what would a 7% budget look like? What would a 6.5 and so on? I think we have to do a bit more instead of waiting to the 22nd. That's a question to everybody.
Potentially a question for tomorrow. Okay, I think we'll note that, and maybe it's something we pick up tomorrow when we have our strategic planning and budget session in the day. Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair James. And I just want you to know that this was not pre-rehearsed, but further to Councillor Craig's point, I do think decisions have to be made. I think that what we've got before us is staff's best advice. And if we decide collectively that we would like to have a pilot project come back, or whether we would like to see the age 5 to 12 or seniors, that now is the time to give that direction. There will still be time to debate that on the 22nd. And I would not necessarily agree with Councillor Craig that we need to pinpoint an amount at this juncture. I think it's more important to say, what do we want to be included in this budget? And then whether it's a reserve or it's on the tax levy, those are the things that we can debate and decide on the 22nd. So I think it's been a really interesting conversation. There are lots of points of view. If the prevailing feeling is, as Councillor Huniak said and Councillor Vrvanovich alluded to, that it be a pilot project, maybe we should turn our minds to asking staff what that would look like and have that come back on the 22nd.
Fair. Okay. I see your hand, Councillor Erb. You want to respond to that?
I can't get
it's not okay.
I can't get my system to work here.
Did you hit that?
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't.
Anyway.
Go ahead.
My
You're pushed one more down.
I'm sorry if Chair Redmond wanted to be clean up, but I couldn't get my hand up here. I'm not sure what I'm hearing from colleagues or if we know collectively what we want. And I'm feeling sorry for staff trying to interpret what they've heard. I thought the report that came back, I liked it. Like I thought some of the questions that we asked for, the recommendations, and so I'm not sure if I'm missing something or not understanding something. And I'd like us to move and support this, but I know if I move it, my sense is it's going to get defeated, and then we're going to be back to where I'm not sure what we're asking, and I'm not sure if collectively we know what we're asking. So I'm not sure if this is where we need a timeout to figure out. I guess I'm looking for direction, but to me, we're not going in the same direction together.
I think we need to pause. We can be really quick to act on things without having the proper, thorough process, vetting process. And I'm conscious as well of just jumping ahead and making a decision. So I think there is some conversation that we as council need to have, because we will be putting staff in a very tight situation, just making a knee-jerk reaction. So Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whew, hi, guys. Okay, so really good discussion. So I think this, yeah, it is. Jim, different points of view is really good. So I think we should still leave this motion as a deferred motion, but it's still an existing motion. I think we should give the staff two other options. So this council needs to pick two other options, be it a pilot project just alone, be it one where we do youth and seniors. We create three motions and you work them out scenario-wise for us, and we decide on them. Rather than all this discussion, because we're going in circles, a lot of us saying parts of the same thing, let's give, because the 22nd, we have to make decisions. And we won't be there if we keep going like this. So let's, and I'm asking those that have put their hands up before, what is the motion you want? Let's do three total, one to be the one that exists, and two others. And I don't know what you want them to be.
Okay, Councillor Deutschman and then Councillor McCabe, and then we're going to try and wrap this up. Okay?
Thank you, Chair James. Yeah, I mean, first off, on seniors and the youth, we can easily say we can do a pilot for a year with the children 12 and under and pick one day for seniors. The cost is approximately $250,000. It could come, for example, from the tax stabilization reserve, or there's even a reserve called working funds, which has $10 million in it, and I don't understand what that particular reserve is for, other than it says cash flow in it. And I get back to the 2.5%, and again, staff, I mean, I'm reading the paragraph that is immediately under the chart showing the cost. And the paragraph clearly states that these impacts are evaluated, all other things being equal, so they do not take into account the increased ridership generated by reallocating resources to increase service, which is what we just did. So this has to be reviewed in light of the fact that we just passed the report TSD TRS 23-003 on transit services. And it goes on to say that the proposed service adjustments are expected to support more than 440,000 additional annual rides, which is significantly more than the ridership loss forecasted in any of the fare increase scenarios above. So I'm reading that. I think I have the plain language correct. And it's suggesting that those losses in the table are, all things being equal, without consideration of the new transit services we just passed, and now we have. And so there's going to be some significant impact there. So I'm more than happy if it's defer today or not vote on today, but ask staff to come back. I don't think it's that difficult to come back with a motion that says we'll do a pilot. And I believe, look, Councillor McCabe is an excellent advocate on transit, and I share her vision. In fact, I follow her lead and vision with respect to transit. But I truly believe that we can have a pilot for a year to see the effects of that while we're doing the other part, which is the strategic planning. And I've said that to Councillor McCabe, I've said it to many others with respect to my view on that. So that's where I'm headed on this. It's defer this come back with a suggestion as to where we can fund a pilot with one senior day and one youth day of 12 and under for a year. And I do not support this transit increase because I think that the numbers here do not reflect what we just did today in passing the service improvements. So I'm going to move to defer, but I think there's others on the speakers list, so I don't want to move to defer until everyone's had a chance to air their, it's Festivus, air their grievances.
One more. Thank you for the monologue, Councillor Deutschman. One more, Councillor Burvanovic, or actually, Mathieu, do you want to respond to that a little bit?
Just maybe for clarification on the table. So I think what we tried to say is that overall, so if we take report number 3 and report number 4. So report number 3 says with a number of service improvements, and that's a multi-million-dollar increase in service, we're going to gain 440,000 riders, and we're going to gain the revenue associated with these 440,000 additional riders. Now, if we, separately from the service, if we increase fares by 2.5%, we will lose part of these 440,000 losses as riders, and we will lose part of that revenue. And both of these pluses and minuses are today, they're both built in the budget scenario that was presented 2 weeks ago. So we have the additional revenue that's built in of the 440,000 new riders and the revenue loss of the 106,000. So for example, if we would keep fares where they are today, there's just there's a $272,500 gap that needs to be filled compared to the current the budget that was proposed a few weeks ago.
Okay, I know you have a motion to present, Councillor Deutschman, so I just want to get to Councillor Burvanovic, and then we're gonna come to some consensus before we move on today.
Thanks, Chair James. And you were looking, or somebody was looking for some direction. So I guess what I'm hoping will come back for the 22nd after the deferral that's being considered is something specifically that speaks to the request impacting older adults, students, and the youth piece in relation to museums, and that staff bring a recommendation back that shows how we can run a pilot without impacting the 2023 operating budget.
Okay, just added an additional here. Okay. We could put, I know this could go on for quite some time. So there is a motion to defer this until February 22nd. So I want to put that on the floor first, and then we may have some direction for staff, but we'll deal with what's here right now. So do I have a mover? Councillor Deutschman, seconder, Councillor Wolf. All right, use your e-scribe. That's coming? Okay. Okay, so that is carried. Okay, so moving on to the next report. Do we want to make a motion for staff regarding what was discussed now? What should I be doing here? Okay, so what are the other motions now for staff with direction to transit? So there was a few comments. Councillor Wolf?
I would move that we do a pilot project for 1 day seniors and children 12 and under ride free.
Okay.
And the money to come hopefully from a reserve fund to fund the pilot. And it's a year pilot.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. You're going to, it'll share on the
And
screen.
hopefully you word it better than I just did.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Just I want some clarity because this was all direction that we had previously given, and the practice has been that we deal with this stuff through direction. So I'm presuming that it was already there. Now we're getting into specific motions around direction, and so I'm just like not clear on a process. Quite frankly, I'm not trying. You know, I get it's difficult being in your role as chair, and I respect that. But like either we handle this stuff the way we have, or we have a new procedure and we're gonna like vote on specific things.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 5 because I want to confirm with clerks exactly what this process would be and get clarification there before we move forward, okay?
Thank you,
All right.
appreciate that.
Okay, 5.
Gonna reconvene. Okay, back to you. Run. Okay, so I've spoken with the clerk. Will, you're going to make some comments just in terms of some of the discussion that's happened today and some clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So two pieces that just were discussed by Council. So one, right now, Council has approved a motion to defer the recommendation that staff brought forward today. Section E, which was direct staff to bring forward a comprehensive review of age-specific fare for seniors and youth discounts forward as part of a new Grand River Transit business plan. After that deferral motion carried, another councillor, I believe Councillor Wolf, tried to put forward a motion about a one-year pilot project on that same topic. So the opinion that I'm giving the council procedurally is that you can't deal with that motion right now because you have another motion on the exact same topic that's been deferred until February 22nd. So if you want to do a pilot project for 1 year, you need to wait until February 22nd to vote on that other package of motions with A, B, C, D, E, F on February 22nd. And then depending on what the outcome from that motion is, then you could talk about doing a pilot project because staff would have been bringing you forward a comprehensive review on an age-specific fare for seniors and youth discounts. If that makes sense to everybody, I'll move on to the next piece. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Councillor Deutschmann. Oh, sorry, Councillor Leggett, go ahead.
So just to be clear, in order to move forward on the pilot project, we'd have to vote down the deferral. Is that what you're saying? Because I'm still a little bit mixed up
No,
here.
you've already voted on the deferral. You've already carried it. You would just need to deal with that motion on February 22nd before you can move forward with a pilot project on the same issue.
Right. Sorry, yes. Now my memory, I'll be okay. Thanks.
No problem. Did anybody else have
Councillor Deutschmann?
Thank you, Chair James. Yeah, I mean, Councillor Wolf's motion was just, people were asking for direction. So she can give direction to staff, and staff can come back with options such as the one that she suggested, and there's nothing wrong with that. So,
yeah, I agree. Direction of staff is very different than moving a motion.
Mr. Lochner at times has suggested something be provided as direction versus a motion, and others have relayed their experiences at their council with respect to these issues. But again, with respect to what Councillor Wolf has presented, that can be accepted as direction to staff so that on the 22nd they come back with something along that lines.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a motion, it would be direction. Councillor Wolf. Absolutely, yep.
Okay, then I would phrase that motion as direction to staff.
Okay.
To bring back on the 22nd.
Bruce?
Yes, and I think the clerk also was going to read the direction provided before. So I think we should go through that and add this to that as well.
Okay.
So through you, yes, we will bring that back. That should be recorded in the minutes as direction to staff.
Yes.
And then also, are we going back to the previous direction provided to staff and clarify what we provided today?
The previous direction.
Yeah, so from the minutes of the January 10th, 2023 P&W meeting, the committee discussed the request, including benefits and disadvantages of reduced fares being household income based, exploring innovative opportunities in the townships, service levels and impact on ridership. And CAO Lochner confirmed that staff have taken the direction and that this request will be reviewed during the 2023 budget process, which was part of what came back today from Commissioner Kutsky for the report that was just before council.
Okay, so we have that noted in the minutes. Direction, not a motion. We don't need to vote on any of that. Do we need to vote?
That was
okay,
already
we are
determined
good.
by council.
Okay, I have a speaker list to go through. Councillor Solonen.
Thank you. Councillor Deutschmann actually covered my question/comment, so we're good.
Okay, Councillor Hunick.
Just to clarify the age-specific fare reduction, I wouldn't want this to cancel out the affordable transit program. I don't know where others stand on that, but I would hope that both would complement each other. Do we need to put that in the the direction to stop as well, or?
I don't think so. Would that be? Okay, so we need to add that then within the direction. Thank you, Councillor Hunig.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair James. So just so that we're absolutely clear, so there's no confusion afterwards. So the request that came from the age-friendly group is coming back as via direction, correct? Secondly, there's something coming back with respect to youth and the one-day piece based on my colleague's request. And then thirdly, there seems to be some misunderstanding around whether or not the piece around museums was included in direction or not. In what the clerk just read, that does not appear to be there, but it was discussed. Because there was specific reference around not only the museum, but also other museums throughout the region and so on. And so I want to make sure that that is included in the direction after today. And if it's not, then I'd ask, if it wasn't included, then I want that added today, please.
Okay, so just to summarize, we've got the youth in the one day, the museums, Councillor Hunig's last comments. Anything else? Okay, Councillor Deutschmann.
Yeah, I think it would be important, because I've touched on this a few times on page 5 of the report. I'd like direction to staff to take a look at that for clarification with respect to what is the actual impact on revenue, because this paragraph is in conflict with what is stated there. Because when I read this paragraph, and I would ask Mr. Dyer to take a look at this, it's talking about increased ridership from what we just passed as compensating for the loss above if we don't, for example, go ahead with the fare increase.
Okay, Mr. Dyer, go ahead.
So through the chair, I would say that the point of the paragraph was simply to state that the number of hours that were being added through the various recommendations that were approved in the first report is in excess of the ridership that would be lost if the fares were increased by 2.5%. That's it. That was the point.
So, but doesn't that mean then that it reduces that loss because we're increasing ridership?
So it means, through the chair, that the various changes to service levels that are proposed in the budget and are proposed to come in at various times throughout the year would generate, if I recall, I think the number was about 440,000 additional riders, full stop. The fare increase of 2.5% based on modeling that's used within the transit industry would suggest a ridership loss of approximately 106,000 riders, full stop.
Well, with respect, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, okay.
The paragraph doesn't say full stop. It connects the two. In that paragraph, it says one offsets the other.
It's just, through the chair,
Yeah.
it's providing a relative comparison. We're adding 440,000 on one hand, we're losing 100,000 or so on the other, approximately, and on an estimated basis using the modeling.
It makes sense to me. I think if there is any need for clarification when it comes back in the deferral, when we look at it February 2nd, maybe there's a little need for clarification, but it makes sense to me. I think we're going to get in the weeds here with this, and I think council has already made a decision to defer it. We've got other. Okay, yeah, there's the direction of staff that's going to go on your screens, and we'll all review that. That regional municipality, where did it go? That regional municipality of Waterloo directs staff to provide a report on the potential options to consider a year-long pilot project for a one-day day a week for discounted fares for students, children under 12, seniors over 65, and museum considerations, and investigate the possibility of reserve funding opportunities.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair. If you could put that back up, please.
Yeah.
Students.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not, needs to be
Right.
clarified.
The student part was not part of Councillor Wolf's direction. It was children under 12 and seniors for one day, and children under 12. The student part is really connected to the museum considerations that Councillor Verbanovic had just raised. So just so we're clear, it's not a one day a week for students. It's students get free transit to museums during the school day when they're doing school trips. So however you want to word that, but students should be removed before children and added somehow, and however Councillor Verbanovic wants to word it, I'll leave that to him. Thank you.
So the Regional Municipality of Waterloo directs staff to provide a report on the potential options to consider a year pilot project for a one day a week for discounted fares. Is that where it's for seniors?
Free transit for children under 12.
Free transit for, okay.
So it should take the one day a week out. The one day is connected to seniors over 65.
Yeah, okay.
And free transit for children under 12.
Okay. Pilot project for free transit for children 12 and under.
Yeah. And one day a week for
One
seniors.
day a week for seniors. Yeah, paste it there. A one day a week for seniors over 65, and museum considerations for students, and investigate the possibility of reserve funding opportunities.
Well, I think staff understand what the request was. It came to us. Do you need more detail, or?
It's the wording. It needed wordsmithing.
This is direction. Normally there isn't a motion. Does staff need more specific wording on this, or do you understand what's being asked, is my question.
It's not a motion, this is direction.
Madam Chair,
No. Okay. So
my question is to staff,
it's to
not
staff to make
Deutschman.
sure that staff understand and you have all of the information you need. If there's any clarity that needs to happen, now is the time for this to happen.
I think this is clear. I think now that we have we have the scope, one day a week, free fares, and even though I see one day a week was moved since the last time I looked. So it's free transit fares for children under 12 every day of the week.
Yes.
Free transit fares for seniors over 65 one day a week. And then museum considerations for students, which we can look into.
But the museum piece came as a request to us, and I can't remember if it was, I think it was only certain days of the week were suggested in that request.
When there were school trips.
Yes, for school
When there were
trips.
classroom trips to museums.
Which is, I'll just, in terms of clarity on the museum piece, from a technical standpoint, we are not able to measure where people get off. So that we cannot, it would be very technically challenging to condition a fare on the destination. But we'll look into any kind of creative ideas to try to facilitate that opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Bruce.
And Chair, I really appreciate the time everyone's taking for clarity. I think after today, this is really helpful, this process. Councillor Heening raised a separate issue, and I just want to know, for clarity, how we are dealing with that one.
Oh, yes. Councillor Shuniak, do you want to just repeat your question again?
Currently, there's an affordable transit program, and I don't think the pilot program should be in place of that program. I could be wrong. I could need other council to agree with me, but I don't think it should be one or the other. I think it should be both and.
Okay. And the affordable transit program be maintained in consideration. Okay.
If others have comment regarding that, please
Okay.
feel free to say so.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to read the entire thing. That the Regional Municipality of Waterloo directs staff to provide a report on the potential options to consider a year project for free transit fares for children under 12, a 1 day a week free transit fares for seniors over 65, and museum considerations for students as per the public request, and investigate the possibility of reserve funding opportunities. And that the affordable transit program be maintained in consideration of the pilot project. Are we all in agreement with this direction? Although we're not voting, but now's the time. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, so we've got a deferral, we've got direction. Will, do you have anything from a clerk's perspective? Okay.
Madam Chair, I've had my hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm just wondering, when this comes back, will we be able to vote separately on the 12-year-old, on the seniors, and on the museum, or is it going to come back as a package?
I think if we want to separate it, we can separate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we are not voting on anything. We are moving along. Okay, moving along to staff presentations, Region of Waterloo Road Safety Program. Going to call on Steve Vandekeur, Director of Transportation, for the presentation. And there'll be questions after, time for questions after.
Through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see everybody in 3D. It's been a little while. So I'm going to run us through a presentation which has a number of slides. I'll go fairly quickly, but it's an information session. This is simply for your benefit. Can everyone hear me all right? Good? Thank you. And if you've got questions, there'll be lots of time at the end. I'm in your hands. But if something's burning in the middle, please put up your hand and we'll try and address it as we go. So just a little bit about the overview of this presentation. We're going to be looking a little bit about the regional road network, touch a little bit on the 2020 collision report and the statistics that we assembled for the years 2016 to 2020. Talk about some principles and maybe some little myths, some interesting misconceptions. We'll get into some of the specifics of the region's road safety program. We'll talk a bit about traffic calming. I'll talk a bit about roundabouts because that seems to be a hot topic these days, some common concerns and some misconceptions. And then what's coming? What things are staff working on? Some new initiatives and some of the things that you're going to see more details upon in our upcoming road safety program report. So a little bit on the overview of the regional road network. Overall 700 centerline kilometers of road, and generally the big arterial roads. So you think about the Franklin Boulevards, the Homer Watsons, the Arthur Streets, University Avenue. Those are the regional roads that we're talking about. And the main purpose of those roads is to move large volumes of people and goods, generally speaking. And the other main purpose is connectivity. Connectivity of those roads to higher order transportation facilities like the MTO highways, and as well connectivity amongst communities within the region. Some more fun facts. We have about 534 traffic signals within the regional road network. That includes traffic signals on area municipality roads. So not just regional roads. Every single traffic signal is managed by the region. 37 roundabouts, 33,000 road signs, 170 bridges, 350 kilometers of storm sewers, 2,500 kilometers of pavement markings. Yes, that's 2.5 million meters of pavement markings. And 3,300 road sections and intersections that we monitor on an annual basis for road safety improvements. And just for fun, I thought I'd throw in this picture of
Steve, I'm going to have to interrupt and ask you to pause. We've lost audio.
I don't need this actually, but thanks, Tim. Whoa, that's even better. Okay, maybe I should stand back a bit then, because that's kind of booming. Wow. I need one of these at home. Okay, so that's a little bit about that. The graphs might be a little difficult to see, but this one talks about motor vehicle collisions over about a 24-year time span. The x-axis is years, and the y-axis on the left is collisions per 100,000 population. You can see that the trend is going in the right direction, and that's the thing we're always concerned about. Collisions are random events, and they will jump up and down from time to time, but we look for trends. So the 10-year trend is that it's lowering. This next graph is interesting. It talks about pedestrian collisions. So again, the x-axis on the bottom are years, over 24 years, and the y-axis on the left is number of collisions, so number of pedestrian collisions. You can see it was climbing, but in the last 10 years, that trend is reversing and going down. So it is going in the right direction. And the next graph, similarly, similar axes, it shows a 10-year trend in cyclist collisions going down as well. And here's her graph showing fatal collisions. This is per 100,000 population. Again, years along the bottom, the x-axis, and collisions per 100,000 population on the y-axis. Again, the trend is going in the right direction. Can we do better? Absolutely. And that's what our road safety program is about. Let's talk a little bit about principles and myths. Have a little fun maybe. So, what does safe mean? Well, the definition in the dictionary is not likely to be hurt or harmed in any way. Is a road ever safe? A lot of people like to think of it in terms of a binary. It's either a yes, no. But safety doesn't come like that. It comes in degrees of safety. Everything we do has a risk associated with it. So our job is to make sure that risk on regional roads is manageable and reasonable. But that could be different to different people. And there's another way of looking at it as well, that there are actually two ways you can categorize safety. There's subjective safety, and that's how safe you feel. And there's objective safety, and that's safety that you can measure. And that measurement is usually in terms of number of collisions, severity of collisions. A way of thinking about it is a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I flew down to the Caribbean. We drove to Pearson Airport, we got on a plane and flew to Saint Martin. Beautiful island. Got in a car at the airport and then were driven to our resort. So on that whole trip, what do you think was the most dangerous part of the trip? Driving to the airport and driving from the airport. Where did I feel the least safe? Was in the plane, white knuckle grips on the armrests during takeoff and landing. I did not feel safe. But actually, from a statistical point of view, I was way, way safer by orders of magnitude than I was driving to the airport. But we drive all the time, we feel comfortable, so we feel safe. Who's ever driven home and then when they got to the driveway realized they don't remember driving through the last 4 intersections? I've done that. Come on, someone else has done that. You feel so safe that you enter this state of, well, you're not an active driver. You're thinking about what you're going to make for dinner maybe. That's what I have to think about. I'm the cook at home. Or you're thinking about things you're going to be doing when you get home, but you're not actively driving. But you feel safe because you're just driving through some intersections. You drive through them all the day, every day. So here's some interesting things to think about. The installation of traffic signals reduces collisions. True or false? The installation of traffic signals reduces collisions. It is false. In almost every case when we install traffic signals,
collisions go up. Injuries go up. Why is that? Well, traffic signals aren't really a safety device. They're a device to assign delay and to balance delay between users. And usually with respect to regional roads, which have higher volumes of traffic, whenever you stop that traffic, you generate collisions. Most of the time they're rear ends, but there's other collisions as well. On busy arterial roads, what is safer, unmarked crosswalks or marked crosswalks? So this statement says the unmarked crosswalks are safer. True or false? Unmarked crosswalks are safer for pedestrians, particularly on regional roads. That's in the lack of traffic control. So no stop sign, no traffic signals. An unmarked crosswalk is going to have less pedestrian collisions than a marked crosswalk. Why is that? Pedestrian behavior. The marked crosswalk gives them a sense that they have the right of way and they're less careful. Interesting. If you lower the posted speed, the road will be safer. This is one you probably hear a lot on the phone. Lower the posted speed, it'll be safer. It's false. Because generally, just by lowering the posted speed, the average operating speeds do not change, measurably. And then you get a few compliant drivers to that lowered posted speed. Now your speed differential on that road goes higher. That usually results in more collisions. Here's one. Traffic signals are safer for pedestrians in roundabouts. True or false? False. Roundabouts are much safer for pedestrians than traffic signals, according to statistics. Do people feel safer? That's a different question altogether. Here's a study that was done a few years ago, actually by Bob Henderson, our manager of transportation engineering, where he looked at 30 intersections and compared the collision rates for signals versus roundabouts. The blue column is signals, the red column's roundabouts. So the collision rate, and that was based on pedestrians entering the intersection, is almost 2.5 times greater for the signals than it is for the roundabout. And if we look at our own statistics from our 2020 collision report, here's a graph that shows the 5 years in the report, 16 to 20. The orange bars are traffic signals, the blue bars are roundabouts, and it's showing the average pedestrian collisions per roundabout or per signal. You can see that the average collisions are higher for the signals. They're fairly close in some years than the other. In I think 2018, there was quite a big difference. So we had about 25 pedestrian collisions. We had about 14 pedestrian collisions at 25 roundabouts, but we had 377 pedestrian collisions in our signals. Of course, we have more signals, so we tried to bring that to a reasonable statistic using on collisions per location. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about the road safety program. I'd like to rename it as the road user safety program because the road doesn't need to be safe, it's the users that need to be safe. So perhaps we'll think about that for our upcoming report. So the road safety program is committed to making regional roads as safe as possible for all users, and it's very much in line with the Vision Zero program. In fact, our road user program here at the region has pretty much all the same components of a Vision Zero program. Pretty much all the same. The objective is to reduce or eliminate all serious injuries and fatalities with particular emphasis on vulnerable users. And what are it's a strategic vision, that recognizes that all collisions are preventable. They're a result of user behavior and road design. All users make mistakes. That's something we have to accept. Drivers, pedestrians, cyclists will make mistakes, and that results in collisions. And everyone has a part to play in road safety. So in terms of all users making mistakes, it behooves us to design a system that accounts for those mistakes happening so that the consequences of those mistakes are lower. They are still going to happen, regardless of what system you put in place, but hopefully the consequences of those mistakes will be lower. So the key elements of the road safety program is that it's science-based, it looks at data, it's data-driven, and it follows the 3E model, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. So looking at the engineering side, I'm not going to go into the details, but there's quite a few things that we already include in our program. We do an annual network screening, which looks at locations throughout the region. Those 3,300 locations I spoke about, they're all screened to see where the problems exist on a location basis. That screening as well, screening for demographics, screening for weather, screening for road conditions, all goes in our annual collision report. And we develop road safety countermeasures from those top 10 hot locations for cyclist injuries, pedestrian injuries, and motorist injuries. The other things we have in our engineering program is we also rank collisions by impact type in terms of whether it's a rear end, turning collision, and so on. When there's a fatal collision, we do a fatal collision review. And every single capital project, whether it's a new road or a road widening or a road reconstruction, we always assess any safety issues that are on that road as part of the planning and design for that project. So I think it was mentioned earlier this morning during the discussion about automated speed enforcement that other things need to come to play. And yes, a true road safety program, a true road traffic calming program needs to incorporate a number of elements. There's no one element that's going to be a magic bullet in any of those programs. It needs to be a combination. So every road project that goes to construction has safety improvements built into it. Other things we do on the engineering side, I won't go into the details, but staff review policies. We also have some systemic safety programs like our pedestrian countdown signals, our leading pedestrian interval program, where we are retrofitting traffic signals to make them more pedestrian friendly and more user friendly and more safe. Ongoing research, we've got staff that sit on technical association committees. I sit on the geometric design committee with the Transportation Association of Canada. Other staff sit on the Road Safety Committee of Ontario. So staff are always looking for new ways of achieving some safety improvements. And we have also done some pilot projects that are still ongoing and some we've done in the past. On the education side, the region's done a number of public education campaigns. I've just listed a couple. Our most recent was our Extra Sec Check, part of our Safe Roads Waterloo Region program that I think we did in 2018, 2019. We've done numerous roundabout education campaigns since we started building roundabouts in 2004. And of course, the media that we use is all over the map. We've done everything from radio spots to having a message on the Jumbotron at the Kitchener Odd. We've also had bus ads and also used social media. There's always more to do and new ways of getting and reaching out to folks. We've even built a roundabout at the Children's Safety Village to try and educate those new upcoming drivers who probably went home and told their parents how to drive in a roundabout at the end of the day. So we had some fun with that. On the enforcement side, we have ongoing collaboration with the police. I think that was mentioned as well earlier today. We do work with the police. We meet with them regularly to look at problem locations and look at upcoming enforcement activities. Well, also, we have our camera-based automated enforcement program, of which there's lots of interest about that this morning. Red light cameras, 15 in our system right now. Automated speed enforcement and the upcoming expansion. I don't think I need to elaborate on that too much more right now. And also looking at the school bus stop arm camera program, which is still in its infancy, but something we're keeping our eyes on as part of working groups. We also collaborate a lot with our area municipalities. There's a group that meets, I think, quarterly and sometimes more often with our 8 municipalities, including police, to talk about ongoing traffic engineering issues, safety initiatives, safety problems. And the objective there is to share information, to help each other out with new programs, align principles, and consistency of approach in our engineering matters. Let's talk a little bit about traffic calming, but I'm just going to wet my whistle. Traffic calming, obviously a big concern of residents in the region. Historically, on regional roads, which generally deal with higher speeds and higher volumes of traffic, traffic calming was not really applicable. But those were more the old style speed humps and some of the radical chicanes, some of which is being reviewed. There's also the need to consider the different contexts between the urban and the rural roads. It's very difficult to traffic calm a 4-lane urban arterial that's carrying 25,000 vehicles a day. There's ways to do it, but it's different than looking at a 2-lane road coming into a rural hamlet. There are different ways to approach those big challenges on both sides. And we also, from a safe systems approach, have to look at trying to get those excessive speeds down, because those are the ones that generate fatalities and serious injuries. So there's things that the region has tried over the years. Some have worked a bit, some have not really worked. And again, they were tried in isolation. To my point earlier, there's perhaps some opportunities to look at trying some of these things more in combination, where we may have better results. But in general, lowering posted speed limits in the absence of doing anything else has had really no positive effect on operating speeds. Adding traffic control, so adding stop signs along a road is not an effective traffic calming tool. You'll get slowing down within 100 meters of the stop sign, and as soon as the vehicles pass the stop sign, they speed up and sometimes go even faster to make up time. Adding traffic signals, not a traffic calming device. Again, same effect as stop signs. Localized police enforcement is great. The day that the cruiser is there for that 2 hours works really well. Once the cruiser's gone, not effective. And it's only for a very short stretch of road where you get that effect. Community safety zones have been tried. There were some speed reductions, but there was also some increases in collisions associated with those community safety zones when they were tried before. It's something that I think we need to have another look at. And obviously, we've been asked to have another look at them this morning, based on this morning's discussion. So it'll definitely be on the table for us to look at again. Driver feedback signs, temporary ones, are great, sort of, when they're in place, but as soon as you take them away, no speed reduction effect. The permanent ones that the region has tried have not resulted in huge decreases in speed. And in fact, in one location, collisions went up. And I think there was also a trial that was done by area municipal staff that didn't result in significant speed reductions. So I think that one did not pan out the way it was hoped. Special pavement markings have been tried as well, notches and white stripes across the road to try and give drivers a sense of their speed. Those have been largely ineffective, but we did try them. So that's just a photo of a temporary driver feedback sign. Somewhat effective when in place, but the effect is short-lived. And once you pull it, the effect's gone. So what does work? And some of this was talked about this morning. Urbanizing the road, adding curbs and sidewalks does help. Gives the drivers a feel that the road is tighter, it's more constrained. Roadway right sizing is more about, in some locations, do we need 4 lanes? Could we go down to 2? And that's also a consideration as part of reconstructions. Narrower lanes, I've been a proponent of narrowing lanes, but of course we do have to meet some minimums for buses and trucks on regional roads, but I think there's room for squeezing lanes a little bit. Raised medians and refuge islands can be very effective at reducing speeds in the vicinity of the island. Again, in and of themselves, not a huge effect over a long stretch of road, but there can be some benefits. Having driveways and buildings close to the road, again, gives drivers a sense that they're in a different environment, tends to get them to slow down a bit. Do they slow down enough? One may argue no, but it does have an effect. So just a photo of a refuge. It's not one of ours. I I didn't have time to grab one of ours, but it's very similar to one of our PED refuge islands, pedestrian refuge islands. So there's other tools in the toolbox. Some of them we're looking at, some of them we have before. Instead of going through the list, I'll show you some pictures. Pictures are always better. So this is what you would call a speed bump, which might be applicable on a local road, generally not applicable on a regional road where we have heavy trucks and a lot of transit. What is probably more applicable is more of a speed hump or speed table, which is a longer, wider raised section of road. It's better for transit, and it's something we're looking at trying in some upcoming roundabout projects for the pedestrian crossings, is a raised crossing at the roundabout crossings. That'll slow vehicles entering and exiting the roundabout. Chicane. I don't know if you want to try this on a major road heading into one of the hamlets, but it's something that we certainly need to take a look at. Now, this is probably a bit of an extreme version. There are lots of versions of chicanes. This looks like it'd be more applicable on a local road, but there may be some opportunities for looking at something for an arterial road. Just to give you a view of what one looks like. This is a raised intersection. I know it's hard to see, I apologize, but that intersection, the distance is all raised, the whole intersection, so that pedestrians are basically walking on a level that's the same as the sidewalk. And those have been implemented in many parts of Ontario, and might be something that we should look at for some locations here in the region. Here's a raised median gateway feature. So at the entrance to a town or a hamlet, you put in a raised median. This does have an effect on speeds at that location. Of course, once you put something like that in there, you do get a lot of concerns raised from the farming community that they can't get their equipment through there. They have a lot of challenges getting that equipment through there. Every time we have suggested one of these on a project, we ended up not building it because of those concerns that were raised. But it does have a positive effect. So is it worth looking at again? Perhaps, but we have to understand that there are also those challenges with the rural, with the farming community. Our Flex Bollard pilot project is still underway. I think we're drawing to some conclusions on that. Again, that has caused some concerns with the farming community, and it's also costly to maintain the flexible posts because they get knocked over a lot and they have to be taken down every winter and put back every spring. So it's a fairly costly program, but we gave it a try. The results were not that great, but more coming on that. Roundabouts, common concerns and misconceptions. So let's talk a little bit about roundabouts because I know everybody wants to talk about roundabouts. We hear this a lot. Roundabouts, the region's roundabouts are too small. They're bigger in Europe. You see the little shadow at the bottom of that picture? That little shadow? That's the shadow of me in a bucket truck. Because I took that photo, I was up in a bucket truck 30 feet in the air to take that picture. Yes, the roundabouts are, you could call them small. They are bigger in Europe. Yeah, they're bigger in Europe. This is one in Oxford. It's a hamburger roundabout. It's on the A40. It handles about 60, 70,000 vehicles a day. Very big, fully signalized all approaches. But they're also very small in Europe. Lots of really small ones on local roads. And then there are ones that are about the same size as ours. My point is, roundabouts come in all shapes and sizes. The important thing is to design them for the expected traffic volumes and the design vehicle that you have. Central Island landscaping. I wish this was one of ours, but it is not. I think it's in Shanghai. But we get a lot of comments about landscaping in the middle makes it dangerous because drivers can't see the other side. Well, you don't really need to see the other side, although people may want to. I think in places like Australia, where they used to have wide open roundabouts, it actually led to higher operating speeds, people taking more chances because they could see more, and so it became a bit of a race to get into the roundabout. So my point here is excessive sight distance can lead to high vehicle speeds. And Central Island landscaping makes the roundabout more visible at night. So your headlights are hitting something like bushes or vegetation, so you know there's something there, because what you don't want, and I'll show it here in this photo, is the see-through, where you can see through the roundabout. So at night, if the lighting's not the best, you might think you can drive straight through. We have had drivers do that. Roundabouts are great at catching drunks the drunk catchers, they end up in the central island with their car suspension destroyed, but they walk away. So what a driver really needs to see when they approach the roundabout is they need to see traffic to the left. So that green triangle is just basically give you an idea of what they really need to see so they can assess whether there's a safe gap for them to enter. So really they need to cover off that part of the circulatory roadway. So if there's a car coming on the opposite side, that car has a very long path to get to where they are, as opposed to the path that that driver has to get in the roundabout. You can see that that car on the other side will never get to them before they've gone into the roundabout and made their way. So they don't need to see the other side. It's actually distracting to start looking at vehicles on the other corners. You just really need to look to the left. But you also need to look for pedestrians as well. So on the exit, you need to have a clear view of the exit where the pedestrian crossing is. That's also important as well, and we check all those things as well. So this is what our landscaping would look like. This is the one on Town Line and Canamera. So you can see that landscaping is in the center, but there is opportunity to see over the edges of the roundabout. So you can see the crossings and you can see properly for traffic. Roundabouts are located too close to the roundabout is another common question we get. Some of you may recognize the person in the photo on the left. That's former Councillor Jean Halboom, who we took out for a walk around some roundabouts, and she was a willing participant. And on the photo on the right, that's my 3 kids crossing the roundabout at Iron Needles in Highview, because I made sure that from a young age, they knew how to cross a roundabout. So I took them out one day and made them learn how to look for traffic. So that's them on the right. So design guidance, most design guidance suggests that the crosswalks be set back 1 to 2 car lengths from the entrance to the roundabout. So, and UK standards dictate that all pedestrian crossings be located about 5 to 20 meters. If you locate the crossings too far from the roundabout, guess what? It's not along the desire lines of the pedestrians. They're going to walk and cross at the roundabout anyway, because they're not going to want to walk out of their way. And also vehicular speeds are higher as you get away from the roundabout. So those crossings tend to be less safe. And that was supported by a study done in New Zealand, 2012, which recommended the setback be no less than 20 meters. Regions designs, the newer designs, have about a 12-meter setback, which is about 2 car lengths, 12 to 13 meters. Okay? Anyway, just thought some interesting things. You may get calls like this too, and just to help you answer those questions when they come up. But of course, you can always direct them to me. Happy to answer those questions. So what's coming? Some of the things that staff are working on in terms of some new initiatives and stuff that you'll see in the upcoming report. So we're going to provide a review of that flexible bollards pilot project. There is, of course, the planned expansion of ASC, definitely. And we have a new education campaign that we're going to start working on later this year. We are going to be looking at the review of the need for flashing beacons at roundabout pedestrian crossings. I think that was also suggested over the last few weeks by some councillors. We are looking at that. I would say mostly from an accessibility point of view, to make the crossings more accessible, but also to help with some safety concerns as well. We are looking at the existing lighting at all of our existing roundabouts. We're going to be undertaking a review of that and seeing if we need to bump up the lighting at some or all of our roundabouts. And this is just what a facility would look like with a flashing light. It's same as our level 2 crossings that we already have at the roundabouts, except there's an overhead arm. You can see the arm, but also too, hard to see, but between the neon sign and the white sign on the post, there's actually a band of lights that are quite bright, and they will catch drivers' attention. Okay? We're also going to be looking at traffic calming in the rural hamlets. We are also looking at a review of warrants for all-way stops in the rural local context, something we're reviewing. And we're also looking at potential for adding additional control for pedestrian crossings, mostly in the urban areas, but also could be in the hamlets as well. We're also looking at evolving intersection design. You've probably heard the phrase protected intersections. That's definitely something that we have been working on with our design and construction staff, creating some new guidelines, and we participate in provincial and national traffic safety guidelines. And all the things will get summarized in our annual road safety program report. So, this is definitely not one of our roundabouts, but if there are any, we wish it was, but if there are any questions,
So I'm going
I'm at your service.
interject here just for the essence of time. Steve, thank you so much for your presentation. I think it provided a lot of clarity for us and hopefully those watching around road safety within the region. If for council, if you'd like, after the presentation, direct any questions to Steve directly, okay? All right, because this was just for information, but valuable information. Thank you. I'm going to say to direct it, just send an email, okay? Just because we are significantly behind, and I don't like to, time is one thing that, you know, we can't change. Okay, so moving along, item 8.2.1, curbside waste collection changes. Commissioner Jennifer Rose, turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. It's we're talking about something different now, not roads and traffic. So hopefully you have some interest in this topic. It is going to impact all of our residents, and I wanted to walk you through some of the recommendations that we're bringing forward for our curbside collection contract changes. Director Arsenault and I will be here to answer any questions that you have. So this report is really a second report in that series of reports that I talked about, which will be impacted by the Blue Box transition in a slight way, but still part of that conversation. So our current curbside collection contract was extended to 2026 to align with the full transition of Blue Box, and that was approved by Council. So now that we're in 2023, we really need to get moving on getting the next version of the contract out, because it does take quite some time for the vendors to procure trucks and get themselves organized in order to deliver that service, especially to a municipality of our size, which is why we're coming to you so early in 2023 to discuss this and get some direction from you so that we can start writing our contract, the details of our contract. So in the recommendations, you will see that we're recommending moving to a cart system. Carts are actually a new technology that a number of municipalities have picked up on already. They help reduce litter. They will actually eliminate the bag minimum because people will fill their carts. But the other really great thing about carts is you can put an RFID tag on them and collect data and information about waste to be able to target educational programs. So it's a really neat technology, and I've actually seen artificial intelligence used with the carts. So it's a new technology that's coming forward. And also the other added benefit is the vehicles that are used to with carts only need one person who's sitting in the right-hand side of the cart in the truck, and they're able to see all around the truck. So it helps with public safety and also health and safety for the driver. The other recommendation is moving to a natural gas to power the vehicles. This will support the region's climate goals, and it could save in our operating budget up to 30% in fuel costs, which will have a big impact. As you know, this year, fuel is one of the big drivers for the inflation and the increase of our 2023 budget. The 4-day work week that we're recommending provides flexibility to our staff with scheduling and route delays. So if there's a route delay or a missed day due to weather, then we have that flexibility, and also stat holidays normally fall on a Monday as well, and it just gives that flexibility to our team in order to make sure that our service can be provided to our community in a good way. And then we are also asking council for approval to review the service levels for businesses which currently receive curbside collection service. So those are the businesses in our downtown areas. And this is a good time to review these services for two reasons. One, we're embarking on a new collection contract, and also the Blue Box service, as you know from our last report, will no longer be provided to businesses after March of 2024. So we as staff thought this would be a good time to go back and look at that level of service. Just to give you a little bit more information around that, currently businesses in the downtown areas and the cities receive a premium service of a 6 days a week pickup. Meanwhile, as you know, we have weekly pickup for Blue Box and green organics in residential, and every 2 weeks for garbage. Also, downtown businesses, or any businesses for that matter, have unique needs. Sometimes they want us to come at a certain time of day, or they want us to come on a certain day. And this can be difficult for us to accommodate in providing this service because we do have a general curbside collection contract. The region is also competing with private collection businesses who contribute to the economic vitality of the region. And it should also be noted that providing the service to these businesses in the cities in particular, is more than double the cost of providing the service to residential curbside and almost quadruple the cost in the townships, with a total cost to the region taxpayers of $625,000 per year. So this $625,000 is only the collection cost in the contract, and it doesn't include haulage, processing, or staff time. So that's why staff are recommending to council that you direct us to review our service levels for businesses, and then we will report back later this year and to see whether we will be including that as part of our collection contract. And that's the end of my introduction, and John and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I have one question. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. And Jennifer and I have discussed this before, and we have a business in our downtown core that was getting picked up and then wasn't getting picked up, and then was getting picked up and then wasn't getting picked up, so that it became actually a dumping ground for outside areas that would come by and see all this garbage there that wasn't getting picked up, and they just add to it. It became a huge issue. And so we approached Jennifer and asked that she look at the map of the downtown core and please be consistent in picking up these businesses. And again, they're quite upset that they're not getting picked up. And I apologize for some of them's anger towards the situation, but it doesn't change the situation. So I'm asking that the region be consistent and pick up in the downtown core in air. And I believe Jennifer, and I drove Jennifer on the route. She went in my Beetle. We didn't put the top down. And I showed her exactly where it was and how it laid out. And it is consistent to the core. And this place was always picked up, always, until we started with the new regional thing. And then it's been so inconsistent. But it was at Dates Foundry before, Councillor Deutschman, so you know it. And it always had garbage pickup. So thank you.
Okay, Jennifer, you've spoken about this, so you're well aware.
Yes, that's
okay.
correct. Yep.
All right. Okay, Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair James. I am prepared to move the recommendation before us. I think it's a solid plan and it provides consistency and certainty. My only question would be, if we can get it seconded, is how is this going to be communicated, because we're in a period of transition to consumers and to the public?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. We certainly are ready to get going on an engagement process with the public. I think we would say our last big changes in 2017 were quite successful. We had a sort of a four-pronged, promotional and engagement program, and we're ready to go with that and start on that with our staff and get the information out to the public so that they understand what the changes are. The nice thing about this, and I guess why we're here today, is obviously the policy changes. We have to get the information going on the procurement documents to hit a timeline to get everything ready for March 2026. But we do have some time. We don't have to have everything done by the Q3 of this year in terms of all the information for every single resident. So it's a work in progress, but we need to get started now to get the information together to get it out to the residents.
So again, Madam Chair, I'm pleased to move the recommendations if there's a seconder.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Foxton? Okay. I do have Councillor Shantz on to speak, so go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question about reviewing the industrial piece. Will part of that be looking at other options for industrial, and would we consider, assuming we could provide it cheaper, would we consider that as an option? And maybe I should just wait for the report. You can tell me that.
No, I think that's a fair question, and that's exactly what we're looking to do. And I think that's one of the, with the changes to cart collection and how this type of cart collection is primarily residential, the compatibility issues with some of the downtown areas could be problematic. So it's exactly the reason we need to review this with those customers to see what may be an option moving forward, maybe a different technology, different methodology.
Okay, Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair James. I just want to know if Mayor Foxton will get to pick the new day for North Dumfries, because looks like we're losing Mondays.
See you. Okay, I am going to, we've got the mover, Chair Redmond, seconder, Councillor Foxton. Going to call the vote. Please use e-scribe when prompted. That is carried. Oh, okay, raise your hand, we'll get you. Okay, that is carried. Okay. We are now going to item 9, information. There's just the council committee tracking list. Item 10, other business. I do believe, Councillor Craig, you have other business before we close this committee.
Yes, Madam Chair. Very quickly, a little earlier in today's dialogue, Chair Redmond and I had a bit of a gentle dialogue about budget. And what I would like, if possible, for tomorrow, because I can't accept 9.2 as a final, I would like staff, if they could come back to us about gapping with regards to our employees and hiring, and get some ideas of whether it can be used in some way. I think we have about 10% of our staff annually that either retire or move on. And I'd like to look in terms of how we're replacing and whether we can find some savings in gapping policy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will now start need to adjourn the meeting. So I need a mover to adjourn, Councillor Huniak, and to seconder, Councillor Williams. Okay, we will now start the vote. Don't close your devices yet. Okay, that is carried. Meeting's adjourned at 4:40. Our next meeting is March 7th, and we're going to start the community service